This is Calabash Community. It is now time we meet the other exhibitor at the Blue Coral Mall. By the way, the exhibition is on until the 17th of September. There is time for you to pay a visit. Now let us meet Arnold Toulon.
We want to welcome to our studios here at Calabash TV, Arnold Toulon. Arnold, we've met a long time ago, quite a while. It's been a while. It's good to see you again. And we're talking to you now in connection with an exhibition that the Cultural Development Foundation has put on. It's an emancipation exhibition at the Blue Coral. And just to remind our viewers that it's actually ongoing until the 17th of September. So there's still a chance to come see that exhibition. And it is under the theme Post-Emancipation, the St. Lucian Psyche, Renaissance, Relevance, and Resolution. So that's the underlying theme. But as an artist, you have freedom to portray whatever theme you want. So I'm not sure if you stuck to that theme, but you will tell us about that in just a while. First of all, good to see you again, Arnold.
Well, thanks. It's a good while. Meeting again in the same sort of forum.
Yes.
For all these years.
So let me ask you, because I wanted, when I went through your paintings, I was trying to get a sense of the beginnings. What was the one thing that inspired you to take this on seriously? Well,
from growing up in a household with very artistic parents, my mom was a teacher, my dad worked for government, but he was a very good artist. Mm-hmm. And though I didn't really get to see him work, he stopped painting later on. He did woodwork and stuff, but his drawings were excellent. My mom sang and also did a little painting, designing and stuff. So, you know, we had that. Another brother of mine was very good, more advanced than I was. And from school days, I just found that I could manipulate stuff, whether it was sculpture or designs or stuff, I could manipulate. And then I started drawing. But it wasn't until I was about 15 or 16 I really started using oil paints. I was always afraid of oil paint, I don't know why. And when I started, I did crayons before everything. But when I started, I just realized I could use the medium. You know, so having a very fertile imagination, I suffered from insomnia most of my life. Not really the type that really kills people, but where I would not be able to sleep for hours, and I would just be, my mind is just busy, and I'm trying to remember something I saw, and I'll try to draw it into the night. And so that continued all into high school. I got involved in other programs with other artists and stuff.
What are themes that came to you naturally, or did you inherit some themes from your father?
The thing, my dad took part in an exhibition in Curacao, and he got a special mention for painting called Carib. But it was done in a very abstract manner, which is totally not what was happening in the Caribbean, in most of the Caribbean, Windward Islands especially. Most of the people you heard about painting were doing landscapes, portraits and that thing. So he did this really abstract piece, and that's the first thing I remember seeing growing up. It's amazing that there was also a St. Lucian artist in that show. That's in 1958 or something like that, long ago, yeah. I don't remember his name. So that was sort of growing up in that climate.
So, I mean, especially you said you did quite a bit in school. When you paint in school, obviously your school friends would be familiar. They would probably want to see more landscape paintings. That's what we used to. We have beautiful landscapes in the Caribbean. At what point did you start to think, well, I can probably start focusing, experimenting with the abstract?
Well, the thing is, I was never really into landscapes or realism. My influences were more surrealistic and paintings of dreams by Salvador Dali and some of Picasso's abstract work, which is the little opportunity we got to see any art through books and stuff. So a lot of times what I was doodling and drawing was really my imaginative stuff. And so now and then I would draw realistic things, you know, like country houses and stuff. But it was a lot later on in life I started doing anything with rivers. So basically my first thing was more surrealistic, imaginative.
You mentioned rivers, I suppose that's the Dominica influence?
But of course, Dominica, you can't get out of it. You know, they have 300-something rivers in Dominica, and that was our pastime. We didn't have video games in those days or anything. It was basically when you're home, you're reading, or when any holiday, any chance we get, we go up by the rivers. You know, we go exploring up the bush. So the forest or the nature's backyard was basically our playing field growing up. And of course, you know, I would be same thing. I'd be by the river, little boy, even before I could paint properly. And we're playing and so on. I'm just watching the reflections. I'm watching the fish you could see under the water, and just trying to figure out how would I portray that, you know. So that never left me up to now.
Were you having those discussions with your father at all?
My dad and I had a very weird relationship because he's a person like he died in 1984, bless his soul. But he doesn't talk a lot. When he talks, he's very concise. So all my life, you show him a painting and he'll come, he'll nod, and then he'll kind of leave, and it'll leave you more worried. What, you know? Even when I was into my 20s, you know, he was very quiet. Then I got a scholarship in 1982. I went to study in Jamaica at the Manny School of Visual Arts. And in 1984, the summer just before going back to school, I did this painting of a lady carrying a pail of flowers in a field of yellow flowers. And he came and he said, that's really good, he likes it.
Wow.
He died the same day because he was ill, he was having heart problems. And that's the last thing he told me about my work was that the last painting I did, he really told me he liked it. So I always had this thing, whilst I was in Jamaica School of Art, I realized that a lot of the principles I was being taught, my dad discussed these things already, you know, so he had a very profound influence on educating me.
Now, while reading the biographical information I had on you, I saw a line that I wanted to ask you about, that you wanted to get away from the Renaissance concept of perception. Why is that?
Well, in the Renaissance concept of perception, basically what you have is perspective was developed as a two-dimensional science in the 14th, 15th centuries with Leonardo da Vinci and them. So basically, you know, you have almost an architectural approach to your drawing that puts receding lines and whatever. But when you look at art, because I have Kalinago blood way back on my grandmother's side, then we have African and European mix. But our tradition of Caribbean people is more Africanized. And because of that, the art and African art, or if you look at Kalinago art on pottery and these things, it's more two-dimensional. So the design would move from the top to the bottom on one plane. Whereas in the traditional academical art, everything is going into the distance and trying to get the impression or the illusion of depth as perspective. So the design aspect was something that always came more natural to me. As I said, my small doodles in my exercise book with a pen were more designs, you know. So I tried to marry both my ability to do realistic work with my concept of that abstract, which is more, to me, more Caribbean. It's more reflects my carnival experience, it reflects our music, you know, and which is our indigenous way of speaking, our expression, our Creole culture. So I try to bring that Creole aspect to let it come out into my work more and more.
Now, you've been in St. Lucia for a while, so did your perspectives change a little once you had a different kind of orientation from St. Lucia's point of view? Is there anything different compared to Dominica in terms of influences?
Well, it's over, I'm living here over 20, going on 23 years. But I've been coming here longer than that, because the first time I exhibited here was in 1987, 88 with Arts Exhibit.
Right.
Heather Flosak and Lady Flosak, deceased. So from the time I was coming and going, but when I started living here, I was living in Babuno, in the country. And it was just like I took a walk from Roseau in Dominica up into the country.
Right.
So I did not have that culture shock. And what I loved more was that there were the people farming all over, and I love to walk on the ridge where you could see La Sociedad up there.
Right.
And I mean, they're a fascinating place to live. I really love living there. And then a lot of the people speak Creole more, so it helped me to even learn to speak my Creole at that kind of not be using or practicing. And the cultural difference is in St. Lucia, I was probably able to focus more. Because the problem where I live in Dominica, it's a walking house, really, right in town. And boy, you know, we get visitors there every day, whole day. So I'm always having people walking into my studio. I think when I came here, I was able to really have a lot more time to work. So it was a marriage of cultures for me. But as I said, it was not really culture shock ever.
Now, I read somewhere too that you used phone cards at one point in time in the paintings, and an ice pick too. Yeah,
well, that's part of the breaking away from the academy.
Okay.
Well, it's in about...
But first of all, why the phone cards though? Because I guess they were all over the place at the time.
Well, the phone card was a device, and I was concerned about the whole method of recycling. So you remember in Castries you had all these phone booths all around, and then the phone cards were dropped all over. So I started collecting them because some friends of mine could collect them. I would collect them and send it for them. You know, I have a niece who collects them and stuff, and they get them from all over the world, and even used credit cards. So I started it, but I realized that it's just like a squeegee. Like when you do screen printing, it's almost the same thing. And then I was scratching into my paints. I took part in a show in Guadeloupe in 1993. And I started scratching into the surface, really scratching into after painting while the paint is wet. But as using acrylic, it wasn't working well. So then in about 1996, I had a small gallery in Bois d'Orange, It was Toulon Art Gallery at the time, and then it became Modern Art Gallery. I really started realizing that the scratching was tearing the canvas. So because the acrylic dries quickly.
Right.
So I changed and I started using oil paint, which is a longer drying paint, and then I could scratch. So I use an ice pick as my pen or to delineate my lines. And I use a phone card. Well, first of all, I use a phone card to apply the paint. And it became very, very technical because it looks easy. You say, oh, I could do that, you know, you paint and you scratch. But then I realized that when you blend the paints without using a brush, it's a totally different blend. The end product looks like a print, you know? And then after that, I would scratch these narratives into it. As I said, these decorative things that come in from the Kalinago and from African, especially like West African influences and so on. And then it becomes a narrative. So from one perspective, the painting looks, and you may have this painting here, the fruit vendor.
Right, so that was one.
The water carrier.
In that style.
The water carrier is a perfect example of this. From a distance, it is just color, and it's color abstraction. And then when you walk up, you realize all these little designs that have been drawn into it. So that from the time I started doing that, I was onto something. And to this day, it is my signature style. So right away, I was invited to show in Guadeloupe again, then I was invited to show in Paris, and then Sweden, Cuba, and all that was ready from the time I started that style, because before that I was invited to shows. But from the time I started that unique style, I was actually chosen out of hundreds, probably thousands of different artists throughout the whole Caribbean to represent different shows.
Excellent. Now, when you called for the exhibition, the Emancipation exhibition by the Cultural Development Foundation, how did you decide what pieces you'd want to feature at that exhibition?
Well, I felt that I needed to finish one or two new pieces for it, which I did especially as the last part of the show, like Found Treasure. It's a painting where you have these two heads on a coconut tree, and they're floating in the sky, representing love. And below you have a silhouette of the pitons with the moon above it. So it's like the two heads and the two pitons, you know, but two coconut trees also. So this whole thing of togetherness coming into it. And then I did this one called This Land We Love. And it shows nature, the balisé, the mangoes, and the two faces, again, a man and a woman, because it's all, that's how we breed, that's how we procreate. And being in nature, so they sort of hidden within nature. And that was my whole thing about emancipation concept of, we have inherited, to me, the most unlucky thing they did was to bring us here, because we inherited a great set of islands at the ending of the day. I mean, they could have brought us to a desert, right? So now they need to pay to come and have a vacation. That's right. So it's a reverse thing. So that is something for me that was important. I have this piece, Maroon Woman, which is like a maroon woman standing up in a river. She's nude but a bit obscured and surrounded by a whole band of lights, representing resistance. And I always use the woman figure in my work to represent different things, both sexuality and as the giver of life, like the mother nature, that kind of thing. So the woman is my metaphor to represent that. So these pieces I really felt, this Maroon Woman painting I had working on for 2 years or 3 years. Wow. And I had reached a stop on it. So I finished it for that show. And also Paradise Found, this one with the landscape, which is a bit of a semi-abstract watercolor using acrylic technique painting. And these pieces I found, well, This Land We Love, meaning coming out from the national anthem, and Paradise Found, meaning we found the paradise and we become it. So it's all about bringing awareness to our environment too, like even things like littering and so, that bad habits that we have developed as a society. So when I show nature, I try to show the beauty of nature. You know, this is something we need to protect. This is our heritage.
Now, as you mentioned the Maroon Woman and so on, I noticed that quite a lot of pieces featured women, and as you mentioned, in a sensual manner and so on. Now, you also have the fruit vendor. What is the thinking behind the fruit vendor?
The fruit vendor is, so again, it's almost impossible to see it unless you walk up to it, but it's a lady with a basket of flowers on her head, fruit on her head. And the fruit vendor, to me, it's like she represents the supermarket. But we've gone into the system where, you know, like we have the supermarket, everything is nice and so. Whereas growing up as a kid, I was always the one, number 7 out of 9, right? Wow. 4 brothers, 4 sisters. But I was always the one who got to go to the market. Some of them shunned it, and you had to walk and you had to carry a basket. But I was a tough little boy, so I began to love it, you know. I was in primary school. I was 8, 9, 10, going to the market for my mom. And I began to get to know the ladies and so on. And, you know, I would spend 4 or 5 hours there. But it's again, you have these fruits all over. And you feel that connection from the countryside. Another thing about the market too was it always rains early morning, and I'd go early. You get the shower, and all the fruit would be, as the sun comes up the clouds, all the fruit would be shining. You know, pawpaws, tomatoes, and Dominica has such a profusion of fruits and so on. So these eidetic images have never left my mind. I've always felt these things are part of my heritage that I can carry with me wherever I go. And so, as I said, she's the provider. You know, so between the person in farming and the person bringing the produce to you.
Before we move on to the next one,
I just want to finish one thing about it. In all the countries I've traveled, and I've traveled most of the Caribbean and Europe, I always go to the market, the local market, people's market, even in Cuba. No matter where I go to the market because I like to see, that is why I see the real vibes of the country.
I just wanted to finish the theme of women. Thoughtful Princess, what inspired that one?
Thoughtful Princess is the lady sitting with the locks, and then you have the bamboo behind her. And basically, the title actually says everything about it. I don't know what else you could say because what's on her mind, it's sort of an enigma. And so she's a bit enigmatic. And I wanted to convey the fact that you have to think and imagine what's on her mind, that kind of thing.
Excellent. Now, what I found interesting too is the Karim River with a little departure. Or is it?
Karim River,
yeah. Talk to us about what inspired that one.
Okay, as I said...
Is there a statement being made there as well?
Yeah, well, the Karim River is something that was done before. So I included it in the show because it was shown in the north of the island, at the inner gallery. But it's never really been shown to a large audience. So I was hoping that I could keep promoting it. Every year or every 2 years, I like to do a big river. And I basically do it on my wall in my house for me to enjoy. So I have a big river coming. And eventually they sell. I've never been able to keep any.
It's one of your prized possessions,
yeah,
I can tell, yes.
If you notice, it's almost a little more realistic. Though when you come close, it's not a realism in itself. But it's a tedious painting that I just keep painting, so you could practically count the blades of grass in it. And when I do it, I have no deadline. When I do this, I have no deadline. But it's, as I said, I'm recreating my childhood river experiences from Dominica.
Yes. So it's not making a statement on climate change or anything like this. That's why I was interested in that one.
Well, not directly a statement. It's more an aesthetic painting. It's a thing of beauty. In terms of climate change, this is always a concern we have because I can tell you one thing about the rivers. Probably you're correct in actually. The rivers, a lot of rivers I've seen that we know before are so much lower. Even, you know, in Shock, how I know it 20 years ago. It's changed a lot. In Dominica, there's some rivers I was surprised. You know how low they were, places we used to dive in. And you hear that story a lot to do with deforestation. So this could be a conscious effort about being aware of deforestation. One of the problems we have is farming too close to the rivers. You know, you really have, I mean, the trees that are there, like, what I witnessed, some pictures from Erica, from Dominica, and even pictures here, are the size of trees that are coming down. And there's a long time this hasn't happened. I mean, we always get trees coming down, right? But the amount of them, especially from pictures from Dominica in Erica, the amount of big trees coming down that river, these are trees that are by the bank of the river. But for some reason, they've been eroded out because whatever other bush was around them, you know, it's a kind of a long process. So you find nature has its way of correcting itself, and it also has its way of correcting us. So I always use a pristine river so we can remember how it should be kept.
Because when I saw it, that was crossed my mind. So that was my interpretation of it.
So much talk for that.
Yeah, so that's fine. And as usual, there's always a passion in everything you do, and it's the same when I first spoke with you. Many years ago, the passion was there, and it's still very strong and burning. And we want to remind viewers that the exhibition runs until the 17th of September, so there's still a chance to go down to have a look at the exhibition. And we want to thank you for giving us the time here, and hope we have an ongoing dialogue with you. What's next for you in terms of exhibitions?
Well, right now, I'm thinking of starting a series. I'm not sure where I'm going to show it yet. So basically, as the show has started, I've just started some new work at the moment. I just would like to say, I wish people come up to the mall. The thing at Blue Coral Mall is that there are no signs downstairs at the moment, but it's on the top floor, and you'll be very, very, happy.
Yes.
you'd be
It's a
very,
good
very
experience that people should
satisfied
have, yes.
if you came up and see what we have. I hope businesses, corporations, you know, whether banks or insurance companies, people in business also, I would love to see these companies coming out and looking at the work and seeing, yeah, probably we could purchase something for our office. Lawyers, you guys out there, we need support. We really need more support. What happens is when local companies, local businesses buy and display local work, they do a lot of justice for the artists, because then when other people come and they say, wow, they believe in you. You know, when your work is bought by your own people, it tells us the stranger, the foreigner coming, that they believe in you in your island. So it boosts us up a lot, you know. So I just hope we can get a lot more support. And I'm very, very, very happy if we get more visitors coming today.
So we should still make a call here for the corporate community as well to visit as well and come with their wallets and the paychecks.
Come with an intention to purchase something.
Yes.
Because I don't think the prices are out of reach in the sense that we have a value on our work. And when you value the work of your artists in your country, it's going to be valued by any show we get invited to out of the country.
Right.
And when we out there, we are ambassadors, super ambassadors. You know, I have shown in so many countries. Over 30-something countries, my work has been shown in. I've been to some of them my work went. But every time it's done, you get, like I get people who 20 years later who found me on Facebook and say, whoa, my wife and I bought your painting how many years ago? And all their friends have seen it. Right. So that's probably hundreds of people over the years. So it's an effect that triggers off itself.
Certainly a very big pleasure speaking with you, and good to see you again. Thanks and good luck.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
This is Calabash Community. We will continue after the news brief, when we do a flashback to those pre-independence days and the debate or lack of debate on the Constitution.